Gentlemen, it's good to be here in Riyadh. Love the hospitality completely. And it's going to be a very interesting India-specific panel discussion that you're going to witness over the next 30 minutes. So we're going to be talking to you about India's startup story and what makes it extremely attractive. And I'm going to be discussing India's startup story with my guests. We have Niraj Singh, founder and CEO, Spinny with us. Ishpreet Singh Gandhi, who is founder and managing partner, Stride Ventures. We have with us Naveen Tewari, founder and CEO, InMobi and Glance. And before I start this discussion, ladies and gentlemen, India has got about over 100 unicorns today and about 160,000 startups. So India no longer is, in fact, about catching up. It is about leading the global innovation. And that's what we are going to be discussing here today. We'll be exploring how India can really ignite this next wave, global startup wave. So let me start by asking you, Niraj, what really makes India different? What is so special about India's startup story?
Indian consumer has in recent times matured tremendously, right? And before operating and building in India was all about building despite having any systems. But because of lots of digital reforms, like created by government, now we are building because of systems. And at the same time, consumers have matured a lot. I'll give you our example, Spinny's example. So most of the customers like complete their decision making and buying journey online. This was not the case 5 years ago. And previously, startups like us used to struggle a lot while monetizing. But now customers are willing to pay if the service level is there, right? So India is a very complex market to operate because of so many reasons. But with initiatives like GST, UPI, government has created lots of rails, right? And now companies like Spinny are building, trains on those rails and leveraging those opportunity to build and scale really faster.
Okay, Ishpreet, what makes India's startup environment quite unique in your opinion? Policy support, capital strength, or digital adoption, the way it is spreading?
Actually, I've been, and all, for that matter, all three of us have been lucky to be witnessing Indian startup story for the past 15, 20 years. I've got exposed to this in 2012, 13 when I was doing it for the banks before Stride started. And I think what Niraj was referring to, naturally every 3 years, or last 2, 3 years, have been very different to the previous 2, 3 years. So you have to bifurcate Indian story in terms of various demographics. I think what's worked well on policy and regulatory framework is the underlying government reforms. So if you talk about, say, Aadhaar as an enablement, which happened quite a few years back, enabled a lot of personal financing. And similarly, when GST enablement happened in India, it enabled a lot of SME B2B financing. I think today, as we speak, we know that we are sitting on an amazing population. But most importantly, it's the 1 billion active digital users in India, which is a big opportunity, right? How do you blend the policy regulatory framework with understanding of the user and create structures on top of that? And I think whether it's happened on fintech or it's happened on companies like Spinny, who's gone and created a playbook on used car platforms. There are a lot of platforms who've executed well with the right management over years, have seen amazing amount of attraction of capital, but it has to be built on right frameworks. And today that framework can be large language models, an AI framework. How do you have inference for that? So I think every 2, 3 years playbooks have kept on changing, and the reason why you have so many unicorns, because ultimately you're talking about an economy which is which in the next 5, 10 years can easily be the second largest economy in the world, right? So we have a playbook for that, and it's important that right set of founders with long longevity. Both of the founders sitting next to me are like 10 years plus in the industry, right? So you need to have that hustle plus longevity, have a right policy framework, and then things follow as a matter of fact.
Absolutely. Naveen, what do you think? What makes India's story attractive, different?
I'll give you a different perspective. I completely agree with what both Niraj and Ishpreet actually mentioned.
That disclaimer was good, that you agree with them and then you have a
No,
different
no, I have an
perspective.
additional point. I'll tell you why I'd say this. Look, I think, we are a country which is where the startup ecosystem started 15 years ago, 17 years ago. It's not that old. But if you were growing in India in the 70s, 80s, 90s, what was the ambition? The ambition was I will go to Mumbai and become an actor. That was the middle class dream that everybody grew up with, and hardly anybody made it. But the dream was important. In India that we live in today, if you go to the middle class household in a tier 2 or a tier 3 town, what is a boy who's growing up thinking about? The boy who's growing up is thinking about, I actually can make it. I don't need to go to Bombay to become an actor anymore. I just need to essentially have a brilliant idea, leverage technology, get the policy framework, get the capital because it's available, and I can make it big. Bigger than what anybody would have ever imagined. So you have a country which is very young, average age below 27. Everybody sitting there and living a dream of becoming an entrepreneur and changing the world. And that possibility and hope is what I think drives our country very differently. And what you would see, if you look at stats, you may have 100 unicorns, but behind the 100 plus unicorns, you have some 150,000, I don't know what the number is, but some 150,000 startups. The possibility for those 100 to come in was because of the 150,000 actually entered the funnel. And that 150,000 came in because there is hope. And I think our country is going to survive and thrive because this whole new generation is coming in with a very different level of hope that is going to change the country in many ways. For companies like what Niraj runs, they're solving deep problems in the country which actually nobody else can really solve. They're using technology, they're using new ways to solve for country's problem. What companies like mine, which is InMobi and Glance, do is to say, why just solve for India? Let's go solve for the world. So the ambition level is about changing the country. It not just changing the country, it's also to go after changing the world. So I think we are living in a world where we are very uniquely positioned, highly ambitious people, a lot of them, and everybody is living with a dream to come out of that middle class.
I'll give you a fun fact. All three of us were not born in tier 1 cities of India. So to his point of ambition, that's the opportunity, right? The scale is the opportunity. The ambition from coming from tier 2 cities to make it to tier 1 cities and then to make it globe is the opportunity. I think well said.
And can I add one more thing to this?
Okay.
Just because I'm in the flow. Look, I think entrepreneurship, startups, is about ability to bear pain. It is our ability to take how much ever pain we can. And I can tell you, the background with which we come, the middle class backgrounds, and combined with the ambition, the pain bearance capability and tolerance is insane.
Of course, with the right regulatory framework, policy environment that we
Yeah.
are seeing right now. Ladies and gentlemen, by the way, we've got these three amazing gentlemen here on the stage. You've got Niraj, who is made in India, whose company is made in India, serving Indians. Naveen, again, a company that's made in India, a startup from India, serving the world. And you've got Ishpreet, whose company is also made in India and funding startups like these and many more, and of course, those which are there around the world as well. So, moving on, let's also talk to you a little bit about what's really happening with the startups. We've spoken about why India is different, why India is attractive, but let's also get to the ground realities. So this question is for both of you, Niraj as well as Naveen. What do Spinny and Glance's paths reveal about the evolving consumer demand and also monetization paths over the next few years?
Good.
Naveen basically started building InMobi and Glance even before India's tag, so he would know this better than me, right? But I can tell you one thing. Earlier, internet adoption was more about discovery, but it has come out of age, and now people are because of the various reforms, because of that kind of infrastructure, created by the government and all the stakeholders. Now people are basically, digitally doing high ticket item transactions like home, car, health, insurance, right? So that is the kind of digitally enabled trust economy India is creating, and customers have also started catching up very nicely now. They are more than willing to pay, the justified margins, justified service fee, and that is making businesses more and more viable. And that is why you are seeing that not just Spinny, but many companies like us are able to grow while narrowing their losses, while becoming profitable. So we are able to get on that mindful growth trajectory where we are ensuring growth, but at the same time, right, it is very much viable and sustainable.
Okay.
And all of that is happening because of those reforms maturing now.
Okay.
Well, I'll give you a perspective on this. So, for example, when the internet took off in late 90s, early 2000s, what really happened was the consumer in developing world or in India was completely different from the consumer in the West. So companies that came out basically said, "Oh, I have to develop for the West, and then we'll figure out something for the for India or developing countries." Fast forward to today, the highest number of users for GPT is actually Indians in India. What does that mean? It means the adoption of technology because of the age band and the access to internet effectively means that today you can build a product in India that can be applicable across the world. India has three Indias. There is a global India, which basically behaves absolutely like the West. You also have a middle India, which behaves like a lot of developing countries. And you also have a lower India, which behaves like a lot of the world where the economic prosperity does not exist. So if you actually build in India today, and we've done that with Glance as we build it out, we built Glance for the first two segments, and we launched it across the globe. The adaptability, accessibility of that was as if you are building sitting in Silicon Valley. So today in India, you can actually build a product that is applicable across the world in the right spirit. And that is the changed India that you would see. You could not have done that 15 years ago. Certainly, you can do that today.
Okay. Ishpreet, how is the investor sentiment really towards India shifting or evolving, looking at what's really happening? What role do you see venture debt, venture capitalists really playing going forward?
So actually, as we spoken, like there are various segments of businesses which makes investors interest. Most importantly, I think investors want certainty. I think what's good happening with India right now, there's a lot of stability of policy and government, which really excites people to make sure that there can be longevity of an investment. And also, I think typically investment flow in today's time because of the domestic capital infusion in the country has been more towards public markets, right? So mid to late stage companies where the unit economics are proven, you're dealing with less uncertainties, the gross margin stacks up, and they have executed at a fair level. The governance standards are very good. I think that's where the certainty comes for investors to flow in. But since we have been speaking here to global investors, we still believe it's barely any allocation to India. Right? If you see mid to late stage of investments, out of all the top global funds, barely 1 to 5% of allocations are going to India. So I think mid to late stage has huge work to do. And there are certain
What could be the reason behind it? Why is it so less?
I think combination of factors, right? And I think Naveen touched upon it. First of all, our own ambitions of dreaming big, right? Speaking and talking about India in breadth of the forums. We were talking about it candidly. This is the first time India is speaking on this as tech ecosystem, what's happening. I think it's important that we get a mind space there with that ambition. At the same time, I think there's a lot of education as well, right? Because there are certain sets of investors who really like India, and there are certain set of investors who do not understand India. So that education of saying, okay, this is what India is. This is about tier 1 India, tier 2, tier 3 India, what Naveen spoke about. These are the nuances to build a business, and at that scale, the magic happens. And you've seen it with listed companies. If you take the top 3 companies of tech which is listed in India, Eternal, Zomato, Policy Bazaar, all of them had done very well. Because the penetration, the education of the tech ecosystem, the embracement has only increased over a period of time. So I think it's a matter of speaking at the right, doing right dialogues, educating investors, because most of the investors are not in India. And being not in India doesn't help, right? Because of the fact that there are various nuances of India, there are various things which you need to know. So they are looking at it remotely. And from remote perspective, you can do as much. They know that this economy will go from 4 trillion to 20 trillion or 15 trillion in some point of time, and that's the excitement. And the population and digital adaptation is the excitement. That breadth of education is really required. I think all of us are advocates to that. We have to be brand ambassadors to make sure that we speak India right at the right platforms. And to answer your question, credit, look, while we do venture credit, I think it's hand in glove with capital. We are capital providers at the heart of it. His problem is very different to his problem, right? How do we create structures to make sure that the scalability of the businesses are as good with our kind of capital versus equity capital? So I don't color our capital, and that's why we speak about being as an investor into companies rather than anything else.
Are investors getting right valuation at exit? Is that a concern? How is it right now?
I think it's been very good in the past 2 quarters because public markets have been hot. So if you see the last, you're familiar to Indian public markets. If you see the last 30 listed companies, 30 to 40% have come from tech startups. That's not happened previously. If you see the IPO filing, it's more for tech startups than the regular companies. Oversubscription for what's happened with the Urban Company right now and other companies. Both of them are preparing for IPOs as well. So the point is that the public markets have been very sanguine and positive about tech startups. And that's a very good form to take exits for the investors who've been sitting long. And they have started making returns. So that's a very positive sign in the last 2-3 quarters.
Okay.
I'll add to that a little
Valuation?
bit. I think the tech companies in India are just starting to come out. So as Ishpreet put out, you actually have a great outcome looking in the last few quarters. It's brilliant because the markets are really paying well. Now, why are the markets paying well? Because let's say any company that solves the inefficiency in India through technology, the gain is disproportionately high. That's why the markets are rich. They're basically saying, I will reward you because the inefficiency you're going to solve for is so high that there is no other way to solve for it. Therefore, the markets are really solidly responding. The one way to see this, by the way, is compare this against China, where our markets are today, both in terms of the scale of the market. Our stock market is roughly about $6 trillion. You compare that to China about 25 years ago. Similar multiples, similar richness, and you would see the same level of growth over the next 20 years. The difference would be China domestically was large enough. India domestically is not as large, but what India would give you is access to global markets because Indian technologist and technology is more applicable and adoptable globally. So therefore, what you would see, India's stock market would cater to an export market also. So we actually have a unbelievable ride over the next 20 years that you just have to be like literally mindlessly just put yourself to it and just be on that treadmill and you would see great outcomes.
Interesting point you made about Indian technology and how it is more adaptable. I want to ask all of you, in fact, about how digital public infrastructure is in a way also changing the way startups design and perhaps scale new products. Would you like to start?
Yeah, without GST, UPI, Aadhaar, it was not possible for startups, I'll not just talk about Spinny, but startups like, I'll take example of maybe Jiroda, right? So until few years ago, right, people really, used to fear a lot, and mass adoption was not there for like retail investors in the public market. But you look at the situation today, it's completely different, right? So this kinds of opportunities and possibilities were not there if that like infrastructure reform was not there in place, right?
Okay.
So it is helping lots of startups to build and execute really fast at a pan-India level, right? And also building the templates for exporting to the whole world.
Okay.
Right.
Naveen, like you are building AI shopping experiences. So same question for you. How do these technologies that we have today in India make digital commerce more frictionless, more personalized?
Yeah, look, I think I think what our country has done really well is solve for digital infrastructure. And I think that calls for a huge level of foresight to be able to see that our country will ride a lot more on digital infrastructure than physical infrastructure. Of course, you need the physical infrastructure, but if you solve for digital infrastructure, you can leap. And I think we are leaping. And that's a big part of it. Our companies, for example, I run our company across the globe. The efficiency with which the payments gets done in India is by far the best. by far the best. Like those of you who travel across India, nobody carries a wallet anymore. Like if you carry a wallet, you're considered old. If you actually have an iCard on you, you're like dilapidated. If you carry a credit card, people don't know what to do with it. Nobody has seen what a money note looks like. I've not carried like that's the level of efficiency the payment infrastructure sits in our country. Now, if you go to the US, it's decently advanced. It's pretty old, frankly. If you were to ask me, it works. It's not as efficient. So you can see that, you can see the impact of it in the companies that you build because the efficiency of our infrastructure is visible.
Okay, Ishpreet, now how should global investors watching us today engage with India's scale and innovation? Should they be co-partners? Should they be focused on structured capital perhaps? Or they should be investing in specialized platforms? What's going to be your advice?
Well, I mentioned this. Actually, it's important to understand India, right? And understanding India and different parts of India, different nuances of India. To his point today, you can technically in a fintech company, 10 people can create a 10 million user company in no time. That kind of infrastructure we're sitting in. We have funded a lot of companies on electric, the infrastructure, government policies, what's happening on ground. And today, even more because of what's happening geopolitically, right? We have to understand what are the bilateral relationships of each countries. So having a team on ground or having partners on ground is the best way to do it. Having volunteers or people who know the nuances. So we were speaking to a lot of global funds here who watching, as I said, India out of Middle East or Europe or US. And we have been only recommending that you can do so much more if you're able to partner with so many people. In case you don't want to create your teams, if you can have local partnerships, that's better to make sure that that you know the India really well. And second is us, what I spoke about. If they are not coming, why don't we go out, right? In terms of speaking and telling what India is all about. So combination of factors, I see a lot of excitement. I see a lot of curiosity of the investors trying to know how to get in various sectors, especially which has right impetus. I think it's all the matter of how do we communicate well and how do they position well.
Well, absolutely. We're completely out of time, but thank you very much, all of you, for joining us. I hope our audience here got a lot of insights about India's startup story and what it really has to offer to the entire world. Thank you very much, all of you. Thank you.